So our guest today is Dr. Nasir Babba-Ahmed. He has an array of qualifications, some of which are a PhD in cybersecurity. He's a certified forensics expert, and he's an ethical hacker. And if you know him, you would know that he's a highly revered cybersecurity expert, and his leadership in that domain and generally is very exemplary. He's very innovative, and his passion for the sphere of cybersecurity, especially in Nigeria and even internationally where he plays, So, and while he was doing his PhD in cybersecurity, which he got from the prestigious LSR laboratory of IMT Mines, the Alice University. Sorry, I'm murdering it. It's French. So he from the University of Nimes in France. That's where he got his PhD from. And he had this research that really went viral, for lack of a better word. And it had to do with cybersecurity in critical national infrastructure. And, if you see, we'll see some of it today, and we'll see some of the work he has done. So over the years, he has established himself as a leader in the cybersecurity domain, and his career has spanned Nigeria, the UK, France, and he has had roles like cybersecurity consultant, where he was at the Explio Group, which is the Airbus headquarters, and then he also was a postdoctoral researcher at Telecom Paris, and then also director of IT services and head of the cybersecurity team at Bayes University. That's actually how I knew about him, from LinkedIn. And then he's also the CEO of Octagon Cybersecurity. And what they do there is cybersecurity administration, forensic investigations, and training. Amazing trainings, and those trainings help to empower organizations and help to fortify cybersecurity or cyber resilience. Now, he has certain certifications, like I said before, like the EC Council Ethical Hacker. He's a certified hacking forensic investigator. He's also a member of certain or numerous professional bodies, the Cybersecurity Experts Association of Nigeria, which thankfully I happen to be part of too. He blesses us with his presence in that community. The Triple IE is a member, the ACE and the CPN, which is the Computer Professionals of Nigeria and Nigerian Computer Society, and he's also a fellow of the Chartered Forensics Institute of Nigeria. So you can see that we're not dealing with any small fish here. And he's done a lot, beyond his technical expertise. He's a seasoned educator, trainer, and he also mentors people, which we are drawing from today. And it goes without saying that he's academically sound, and when it comes to the cybersecurity domain, he's a leader in that regard. And he has a very good commitment to advancing the cybersecurity domain, first of all, locally in Nigeria and then globally. So we have no other than Dr. Nasir Babba-Ahmed. Let us welcome him warmly and let him go on with his presentation. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Nasir.
Wow, thank you very much, Mo. That was unexpected, very, very flattering introduction. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to always try to help, especially on your program as well. And try to reach as much people as we can. Thank you very much for the initiative as well. So basically, jumping right into it, we're going to be trying to see how we can use VAPT to leverage security controls. I think when we started discussing this, it's sort of a bridge between the technical skills that you gain and try to use them with the more theoretical aspects of Infosec. So it's a bridge between Infosec and mainstream cybersecurity practices that we normally do in the industry. So that is basically what we're trying to encourage in this presentation. So I think with the introduction, there is no need for me to do this slide. So it's basically who I am. Who I am. So I will just skip this basically. So the agenda for today basically is we'll try to do some introductions, some theoretical aspects. Personally, for me, you have to bear with me. These are some of the boring aspects before we start to see actually the real tangible aspects of cybersecurity that we are all eager to see. But we definitely have to do some theoretical aspects. Just to recap, I know most of you have, I would like to assume, are some cybersecurity background or some technical background. So after that, we'll try to see what the bridge is between InfoSec and VAPT, basically, and pen testing. So we'll try to look at some real world scenarios and examples, some practical test cases that we're going to see, and also how to leverage these results for security. Then we'll have a short, maybe Q&A session. Possibly, if we have time, we can do maybe one or two questions of a quiz and try to engage um, the audience as well. So hopefully my presentation doesn't take long. Please, Mo, let me know if I'm talking too much. I tend to
No,
do that
it's fine. Just go
because of
ahead.
time. Yeah, the time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just
So
as we planned, just flow with it. Yes.
yes.
Okay.
So just bit of introduction. So as I said earlier, we're trying to see what the intersection of infosec and penetration is in mainstream cybersecurity being practiced in the industry. So more of the practical aspects. So of course, InfoSec is actually one of the bedrocks that we have normally used to, in terms of our compliances, in terms of our assessments that we normally use in both your organizations. So the policies, practices, everything that you normally do. Also, but about pen testing, of course. So these are the two aspects that we want to merge. So they are actually uh, the types of attacks, real world attacks that we try to either simulate or actually perform them in order to identify and then exploit them before the bad guys do. So, so why does this intersection matters? I think this question is a rhetorical question that brings about the whole topic that we're discussing today, because it gives you something that I call the best of both worlds. So both getting your practical insights of your security weaknesses and then enforcing them with your security controls and policies that you normally do on a daily basis with your daily practices. So that's why it's very, very important to merge these two concepts, try to encourage the merging of them. So in terms of the intersection, we have on one side the policies and controls to protect all your data, and then these simulated attacks, of course. But the question is, why does it matter? So you cannot perform one without the other and get effective results. So effectiveness is the key. So I've seen in my experience when we're called in to do either assessment or penetration testing in the industry for large corporations, some of them only have compliance. Maybe they're ISO 27001 compliant, or they're all these compliances that they have done in terms of their assessments, but they don't do their either monthly or quarterly or biannual penetration test on their infrastructure. So that is where the divide is. So this is the reason why it matters, because you have to effectively validate on both sides. And there are others that only do the technical penetration test, but they don't do the assessments and the compliance and the rest in terms of their policies, in terms of enforcement of these policies. So that's why anytime I meet people that are extremists in terms of expertise of just technical cybersecurity, that are called in solely to perform these cybersecurity practices in industry, or on the other side are just infosec experts that are just one-sided on that. We try to encourage them to like live the best of both worlds and try to incorporate it in terms of their expertise as well. again, so a recap that we're going to be doing. Initially, because the slides that I did were too much, I had to remove it because also, apart from my practices in the industry, I also like to make it very interactive. So please, if anyone can jump in, and I like to make it more interactive instead of me just talking up from beginning to the end, as I tend to do. So it's going to be, you can jump in at any time, ask some few questions, let us engage. That is the main aim of this. If not, I would have just done a video and then posted it. So the engagement is what makes it better. So we're going to be doing a lot of recap, as I said earlier. So basically, in terms of the penetration testing, please know if there are any messages, just let me know, because I cannot see with the slides.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, please, if we have any questions or queries, can we just put it in the chat box and then we'll attend to them in sequence? Thank you.
So a recap of a full basic way that we conduct penetration tests normally is for you identify all the infrastructure that is there, the possible targets that you're going to be testing, and then you craft the specific methodology you're going to use before delivering the attack itself, which can be any of these in terms of your internal infrastructure, basically. So again, like I said, we have to look at some theoretical aspects. Of course, it's a bit boring. So a recap, everybody knows what the CIA triad is. Very, very important in terms of your information security aspects that applies in almost 99% of the implementations, the compliance, and the assessments as well. So now shifting to more of the security controls. These are in charge of looking at the preventive aspects, your detection, and also how you're going to prevent it from happening, which are the corrective measures. And then your risk assessment management. So firstly, before you have to identify your attack surface area, attack surface area, you have to look at what are the risk factors, what are the risk areas also. So we're not going to dive into any specific aspect. I'm going to list some of the basic ones that because this is not only an infosec uh, presentation. So yes, so some of them are your standards that you get: ISO 27001 series, all the series, whether it's any of the special publication. You have the NIST also, any of the SPs that we're going to be, I think we're going to be using SP 823 for some of the practical demonstrations for today. You have the for the payments with PCI DSS, and of course for your data, this is GDPR, or in our case, we have the NDPR. So we have looked at the methodologies in Infosec. Now we're going to look at the methodologies in VAPT. So normally we have some types of tests that we normally do: black box, white box, gray box. I'm assuming everybody knows what these mean so that we don't spend much time on them. We have the PTS standard, which is a little bit outdated, but then it's here for the theoretical aspect. So it outlines all the steps that you're going to be taking in terms of carrying out an effective penetration testing. You have the OWASP testing, which focuses mostly on web applications. So both whether it's mobile, whether it's on the web itself, all the vulnerabilities are normally categorized under the OWASP top 10 normally, and have been updated after a few years normally. So, and then we have the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So the MITRE ATT&CK framework, I assume everybody also knows, but then just a brief is a mapping of the modus operandi of each attack that is being performed. Especially this helps very well when you're performing digital forensics investigations, malware analysis, and then it will help you improve in terms of results that you're going to apply later on in performing your penetration tests and improving those methods. So that's why we normally map all our attacks to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Okay, so still on the theoretical aspects, yeah. So the security controls, we all know what they are. They are just safeguards and countermeasures that we normally use. such as basically you can find all these everywhere in your organization or your home: firewalls, intrusion detection systems, your encryption, your access controls. So some of the frameworks I've mentioned, some of them. We have the control families of the NIST special publication, which is 800-53, controls things such as your IAM, your IR policies as well. And we have also have the something similar to the NIST, which is the CIS controls, and has its own actionable controls, focusing specifically on your configurations mostly. You can also add the option of your assets as well, and the rest. So still on the recap, in this case, so everything that we are talking about, especially in terms of InfoSec, how does your VAPT fit into that, even though I've mentioned it in the beginning? So effectiveness, again, to validate the effectiveness of this. So as long as you identify the gaps between your policy and implementation, VAPT will fit in perfectly. So in terms of, you have policies that you already have, you have ways to implement them, you have ways to comply in terms of your compliance. After that, to validate the effectiveness, this is where VAPT comes in to support, to aggregate. I'm running out of words to even use for this specific area. So there are so many. So the key takeaway from all these theoretical aspects that we have mentioned, basically, your security controls are as good as their real world performance on the attack. So you can have all the policies, all the guidance that you can give and assessments theoretically on paper, but then it is only as good as if the attack actually happens, which is the practical aspect of it, which is in turn VAPT mostly. Now focus less on InfoSec, more on VAPT. So you have to try to identify your risk, as I've mentioned earlier, uh, consistent of your vulnerabilities, both not only focusing on the vulnerabilities from your, for example, network infrastructure. So it can be your softwares that you have deployed to your organization. It can be in terms of all the hardware, barcode readers, hardware, storage devices, and also not to forget the user itself. Very, very important. So I'm going to come back to the user aspect. So your threat mitigation. So what are the aspects that you do once you realize a vulnerability? What are the actions that you normally do or take after a vulnerability has been determined in your system? It can be on paper in terms of InfoSec, but then practical implementation of them. So these things can be from delivering patches to your software. It can be from third-party updates of the software that has been given. It can be reconfiguration of your devices. I mean, the list is endless. So it depends, depending on the policies that you have determined for your information security frameworks that you've implemented now are going to be applied practically in this case. Now, compliance, of course. So VAPT actually supports your compliance procedures by actually practicalizing everything that you have determined theoretically. So practically, okay, just a brief example. If you say for you to comply, all users are supposed to change their passwords every, let's say every month. So what happens? What we do is we write a script from our servers to actually block everybody that the password date modified is less than 30 days, basically. And then one script can apply to all. So this is the aspect of the scripting aspect of penetration testing that is going to apply in terms of your compliance as well. So, I mean, these are just basic examples for us to try to see how VAPT comes in to these things. So now bridging the theory and practice together again. So in terms of your VAPT, you have to follow the life cycle itself. So you have to start with some planning to define the scope, objective of what you're going to be using, perform recon, using tools that you can ask if you want after. So there are so many reconnaissance tools based on what you're going to be doing after recon. Now you can start doing your basic. These are very basic vulnerability scanning using Nessus, OpenVAS, Nmap. This will just give you like, okay, a hint of, okay, let's go in this direction. And then you can start your exploitation. This is where you actually apply your technical skills in terms of delivery. So, and then after, you have to assess, okay, first time that we did the exploitation, this was the impact. So you have to do your impact assessment as well. So the impact was high. So the next time after 3 months, when we did the exploitation, what was the impact? So you're expecting it to reduce if you're following the direction that you're supposed to. So after that, you have to document, of course, for either executive reporting purposes or for documentation purposes to see your progress after every VAPT is being performed. So, and then we have so many tools. I'm sure all of you are cybersecurity experts. You are very good with Kali Linux in terms of the tools that are available in the suite. You have Burp Suite for web application pen testing. You have Wireshark for network security. The list also is endless. So the main takeaway from this is that VAPT is a systematic method to test your controls and to simulate your attack behavior. Again, to validate your information security procedures or your security controls, validation and effectively, please. So looking at some real world cases, just basically. So when you look at, for example, one case in the financial sector, so we're not going to be using names in this case. So in the financial sector, for example, one of the banks, let's say in Nigeria. So a scenario that we want to explain is a banking web application suffered an SQL injection attack. So what is going to happen? Now, the vulnerability that you're going to extract from this in this specific case is when they were designing the application, just the basic application, there was lack of input validation and poorly configured databases. So you can see in terms of the vulnerability, what happened is he didn't follow exactly the methodology in terms of their information security policies has written to them. For example, information security policy in terms of secure coding that applies in terms of these. When you look at one of the frameworks for PCI DSS, enforces this specific aspect. So if you don't follow it, in terms of your information security controls, it's going to come back to bite you on the neck when you're performing VAPTs as well. So of course, the impact is going to be high. You can take over accounts and then there's going to be possible high financial losses. So again, mitigation comes in with the VAPT aspects in terms of the implementation of your web application firewall, how you're going to tweak it in terms of your configurations, and then in combination with that, with the information security aspect in terms of your controls for secure coding practices. So, which has been outlined as well in your PCI DSS, especially for the financial sector, which involves any payments. Now, looking at the healthcare industry, now this is one industry that is being given a lot of attention, especially in Europe. In Nigeria, not so much. So I like to focus a lot on the healthcare industry because this specific industry is something in Europe we refer to as the gold mine of data. So just to digress a little, a lot of research and testing, a lot of hospitals. I remember during COVID, I was here in France when it broke out. So we had to visit a minimum of 3 hospitals per week during COVID. That hackers actually took advantage of that particular period to attack hospitals. I'm sure you've heard of the NHS in the UK during COVID, but it was worse, even though it was not publicly said in the news mostly. Some of the news in France actually did do some publications on that, but compared to attacks, I think less than 10% was in the public eye. So minimum of 3 hospitals. So we had to do a lot of traveling hospitals to do incident response, to try and see what we can do to recover their systems back to normal. Many hospitals from inception for about 20 years, they have never used pen and paper in Europe. That was the first time during COVID. They had to go back to filing everything manually, because all their data was held on ransom or affected in one or the other way. So that's why this specific industry is very, very. I'm sure some of you that have access to the underground dark web market, you can see that the most expensive piece of data is health data. So that's why people call it the gold mine. I think one full profile of a person, for example, mine, will go for, I think, $6 to $7, which is very, very expensive. So my full data of it's going to give you my name, my age, my weight, my height, my blood group, my what do you call it? Uh, Vulnerabilities in terms of humans. So sicknesses that I have, illnesses that I have, my if I have any allergies. So full complete data of one person goes for $5 to $6 at most, which is very, very expensive compared to others that go for 50 cents, some mostly $1. So you can imagine if a hospital has been hacked and then its data, you can see on the news, 300 million patients' data has been leaked. So when you multiply 300 million data and you sell it for $5, that is how much? We're talking in billions. And these particular, especially the health data, actually are being bought immediately. They don't last 1 day, maximum 2 days on the dark web. So I've always been asked who buys these data, who is going to. I mean, there's the market, the demand is very high. There are large corporations like Facebook, Instagram that normally buy them, especially big pharma. Big pharma in Europe and the US buy all these data, especially to know what the illnesses people have, for them to develop the drugs afterwards, for marketing reasons, for so many reasons. I think there was an attack. Okay, after this. So the scenario here, sorry for digressing a little. That's why I say I can talk for a long time. Attackers exploited unpatched software and networks, which is what always happens. So the vulnerability is they normally have outdated system and poor access control. So in this case, if you have especially medical devices, so infusion pumps as well. So I've hacked infusion pumps so many times for me to find vulnerabilities. I'm going to show you maybe one example in terms of penetration test for infusion pumps. And you can shut it down, which is a life support item, or you can either shut it down, you can increase the dose or decrease the dose that can kill somebody with just Wi-Fi connectivity, basically, based on this infrastructure or network design that I've given you. So they have a lot of IoT devices, they have a lot of medical devices connected to the network. Of course, so we have patient data breach, as I've explained to you in terms of the impact. For example, what happened during COVID-19, financial, reputational damage. These are minimum impact actually. So in terms of your mitigation, regular patch management, network segmentation, these are the usuals normally, yeah. So like I said, we can use this specific case scenario for any of the sessions of the demo that I'm going to show you, especially one of the tools that I'm going to present. So the main aim is to get the best of both worlds. So how do we do this? For you to get this, in terms of development of merging the two, so we'll do a little bit of background. Like I said, I would like to focus on the, let's say, for example, healthcare sector. So do a little bit of background. Now, this is where your information security controls comes in. You do currently, what do you have in terms of your assessment? So you come and do a current assessment, which I call ASSIS. And the CR, anywhere you see CR, stands for Cyber Resilience Assessment. So you do a current assessment, theoretically, with your pen and paper, Excel sheet, whatever it is that we normally use, or some automated tool. Now, you try to imagine some scenarios, which what we call scenario engineering. Okay, so for example, it's going to be you can hack a hospital via a medical device. No, you can access the data via the software. You can take advantage of a malicious barcode. All these things. Now you have to look at if that particular organization have things like tabletop exercises, TTXs, that they normally do in terms of simulating those things manually. So this is not automated. So do they have yearly tabletop exercises? Do they have drills that they normally do or not? Now, taking all the data that you have from this, you can now move it to the test bed of your penetration test that you're going to be performing. Now, after that, you will have some data on results that you're going to be analyzed, and then in terms of the results. Now you can use all these processes and then apply it to any specific industry. For this example, we're going to apply it to the healthcare industry, like I explained, because of its importance. And then after that, you can now be able to develop a specific customized self-assessment model that you have. And then the craft tool that I'm going to show you that is going to automate your self-assessment model. And then again, this will give you a test bed for all your VAPTs that you're going to be performing. So you already have a large amount of data from combining your information security controls and penetration testing for you to be using. So if you want an assessment framework for any industry, you can apply this in any industry before you start. So I normally do this before I go, because right now I'm working in the automotive industry and the aviation industry. I've worked in the healthcare industry before. So applying what I've learned from all these industries, going into especially electronics. So I have tested one of the new, we have performed penetration tests currently on the new Volvo coming out this year, 2025, Volvo. So because they close to my office here in Toulouse, they have one of their major branches. I've done a test on the e-bike with the updated mechanism that they have for electronic updates over the air. Penetration test on the e-bike. We have done for Bosch. I mean, so many we have done for, I mean, the list will go on. Let me not digress again. So, of course, if you want an assessment framework, you have to look at, okay, this specific industry or this specific organization, do they need your NIST cybersecurity framework? You have to look at the advantages. This is actually general. You can apply it for security, general security, and you can scale it up from small and medium enterprises to large enterprises. And then you can also use any of the ISO 27000 series, always updated, supported, and maintained, which is you can adopt it to almost any organization. The FFIEC normally is used, adopted in the European context and US for fintechs normally. And then open standard for adoption in terms of your CCIP as well, which is, for me, generally, I prefer to use CIIP for generic, very, very generic assessments normally. But then in this case, we're going to take, if we take, for example, the healthcare industry, we're going to choose the NIST and the ISO 27000 series. So the options that we have is, can we build a new model? It's going to be difficult, no. So can we directly just adopt any of these models? Maybe, but what if you try to combine all of them, one of them take good things from NIST, from ISO, from FIC, from CIIP, and then try to combine your customized framework as well, just to apply to your organization. This sounds like a good idea, basically. But what if you can customize specifically on specific items, not just combining them? So I will choose option of the identity protection in NIST, and then I'll combine it with the payment aspect of the FFIEC. I will combine it with the adoption mechanism in ISO 27000 series, you know. that sounded like a better option. So we would like to go with that. These are the decisions, all that you go under the hood, behind the scenes, before you actually go, especially if you're working with multinationals. So you don't just go and start doing, okay, I'm certified on this, I'll just go with my Excel sheet and start doing stuff. No, you have to consider that. So looking at a basic model that you're going to be using, you have the evaluation model and recommendation model, which is before and after. Now, your initial aspects, the MFH means all the aspects that you have chosen in terms of, and then you combine it with all what we just mentioned, the combination and adoption of the specific aspects of your assessment frameworks. All of them are going to be within the life cycle of cyber resilience, which starts from identify, protect, detect, and response, for you to develop an enhanced model for you. So this is just a summary, and I've published this as well. So behind the scenes, what happens? We all know, basically, currently, Mo will tell you, normally these assessments, practically when they're being done, they're normally on either Excel or some type of online version of the Excel table. Looks like this normally. So you can do your scoring. You will check, okay, in terms of the asset management, what do they have? So it will give you subsections of the asset management. Okay, in terms of asset, okay, they do record this. They record it on, when you go to protection, okay, do they have IDAM aspects that they normally protect all the identity management? Do they have awareness trainings? What aspects do they use for data security? So, and you give them a score based on that. So ranging from identify down to your recovery. So you do everything manually. But what if we can develop something that we can immediately input the data generated for, and we can now leverage it for our penetration testing based on your information security controls. So you have an Excel-based tool. Now you can now convert it to a software that you can automate immediately. So this is what we did. So it looks like this. So you will have the option to assess your risk and assess your maturity, basically, automatically, automated. So I'll just play the video. So let's try the option of this. So you can see all the aspects are also mentioned here in terms of the technology. So this is just a demo aspect, just for presentation purposes. The full tool has more aspects between this. So you can see if you choose one category, let's say test technologies and condition types, it gives you all these aspects that you now go and select based on the results that you have seen physically there. You can choose this, you can choose all this in terms of users and number of connections. You can select whatever scoring that they have and you have seen. So this is quite automated in terms of that. So that we go to all the aspects, answer them. You can see all of them are answered. It give you a risks level. You can save the results. You can now try to see if you can save it as a file. Then go to the next one. You will want to assess your maturity. Do the same, and now it saves it for you. You can now view it in terms of summary and the rest. So this is actually something that we have tried to do to automate those manual procedures in terms of Infosec for us. So this is the actual data that we're going to ingest into our penetration testing. So what next? So we have everything that we have done in terms of Infosec assessment with the model. Now combine it with the existing data that we have now, and then we can use it for a penetration test, basically, to make it more effective for validation. So for penetration test, what do you do? I think I have to go fast now because of time. We have the NIST, we have ISSAF, the CREST, but for this case, we're going to choose the NIST. Why? Because it's going to help us, guide us in terms of standardized processes of performing tests. And then for our results, we're going to leverage on OSSTMM, which is more scientific and methodical. So first you have to identify all the items that are specific on your target. You identify the target infrastructure. Now you identify how the connections are made, and then the target points. Okay, you're going to target either the computer, you're going to target a scanner, you're going to target connectivity between the router and the switch, or a router and the medical device, or the device itself, or even the database. So in terms of the processes, so you know that once a patient arrives, you go get care. When you come to the hospital, you go and see the reception. They give you a barcode. You go and see the doctor. They transfer you depending on what you have. So we're going to be attacking either when you see the doctor, before you go to or before you go to the doctor, when you finish with the um, aspect of the reception, or we will target after you've seen the doctor, before you're being transferred to medical care, for example. Or you can any of these if you're going to be admitted in the hospital, for example. So it just gives you. So, and then you have to outline what type of test are you going to do. So we're going to do tests directly on the router, directly on the data, directly on their Wi-Fi, directly on their devices. You want to do. So let's take one example. We want to perform test on the medical device. So you outline, okay, these specific aspect based on the scenario, which is a setup of a basic network with a device connected. So an attacker would, in this test, we're attacking the medical device. So we are going to attack it via Wi-Fi, basically. So what do? We perform the test example. So now is where your technical expertise come in. So the activity workflow that we're going to do is we're going to perform some recon. After some recon, we will connect to the medical device. Once we are successfully inside the medical device, we try to prepare our malware that we will use, and then we will infect it, and then we will actually activate it or exploit it to use. So this is what happens. We do our recon to connect. We've seen, so we want to connect it via FTP. So like it or not, just basic Nmap will show you if you have access to that. And then you develop your malware specifically for this aspect. So and once you deliver your malware, you can see, for example, the infusion pump has stopped. So whoever the patient is not going to be receiving the medication, which might be deadly. So record your results. Of course, we're using the OSS TMM, which is an information security aspect for VAPT. So you can see how everything is being merged in one. So of course, your RAV calculator will do everything for you in this case. And then RAVs actually, when you see at the bottom, you have actual security. RAVs actually, they're not risk, but they show us the security that is being configured, the level of security that is being configured and deployed to protect your infrastructure. So what are we saying? This particular slide summarizes everything. You have your vulnerability identification, and then a results that you're going to derive from this. So it's a cycle. And leverage on the information security controls from your risk assessment that you perform in order to have the perfect or something close to very, very good in terms of your remediation and implementation. So combining everything best of both worlds with their results in between is what will give you one of the most effectively validated cybersecurity results. So in conclusion, VAPT basically is just an essential component of any more type of modern security that we normally do for organizations. So main aim here is to combine your theoretical knowledge and practical testing with the security controls. So in other words, combine all your security controls, compliance, policies that you normally use, and the results in combination with your penetration testing that you're going to be performing. So thank you. So do we have Mo, do you have time for Q&A or short quiz? Or if not, then we
Yeah, sure. We can do the short quiz and then Q&A. Sure, why not?
Okay. So you can moderate this, I think. So we have just first question is just the scenario. So based on what we have discussed in terms of the healthcare sector, so you have Medicare. They use and leverage ISO 27000 series and also conduct VAPT. to assess their internal. So they combine both. So the test now uncovered that there's one disgruntled employee that wants to exploit one of the access control weaknesses, which is the MFA, to access patient records. So specific Annex A9 of the ISO 27001 actually requires strict user access management, but Medicare's implementation, so the implementation was very, very low in terms of lax, so very relaxed. So now the question is, how should Medicare combine both the VAPT and the ISO to mitigate this? So if anyone can answer, because of time, you can.
Please just raise your hand if you want to answer. So we'll do this quickly. Thank you.
Hopefully, many people have followed what we have discussed, and then you can use the same thing that we have discussed to answer. Yeah, I think we have one.
Yes, EB, please go ahead.
I think Medicare could actually use putting controls in place around their MFA. Make sure the controls are solid. People do not just access the system without inputting or having a second factor, a multi-factor authentication to log in to their area of or any equipment. In terms of VAPT, they could also conduct a VAPT on their equipment and other assets they have to ensure that there are no vulnerabilities that could be exploited by that disgruntled staff, and make sure that where there are identified vulnerabilities, those vulnerabilities are actually not exploited by putting in further controls to make sure that that is mitigated.
Okay, anybody has a different answer?
Anyone else?
Good morning, sir. I fully agree with what he said.
So we have options just to answer the first person. I think he chose A, maybe. I think.
So you can just put in the chat box what's your opinion. I mean, everybody can just put an answer in the next 30 seconds. So we would see which has the highest nomination, and
just answer A, B, C, or D in the next, because of time.
So the answers we have so far is A, which is to implement the managed privileged access right to MFA to verify. So I mean, it just makes sense because the VAPT tells you what is wrong, and then you now choose a control in this case ISO 27001 to mitigate that vulnerability. So that is why I tell people that when people tell me, for instance, someone says I want to do non-technical information security, I tell them I do not believe in that, because like you said, it's a balance of both. So even if you are doing GRC, or you have to understand to be able to implement controls, you must understand the gap. So when you're even doing the gap analysis and all of that, if you don't understand the gap, how would you know what to solve? So thank you very much, because what you've shown us here is that we need to stop that, in my opinion, joke, as I call it, and you say I am not I am not. So technical. You have no business doing that job if you do not understand technical, or how to even come up with technical controls without knowing how to get the gaps. You don't need to do it yourself, but you should be able to understand and interpret, for instance, a VAPT report. When you see one, you should be able to interpret it so that you can recommend mitigants for the vulnerabilities there.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Hope to see you on the next session. Leave your emails open, your notifications open, and if you haven't joined the ISMS community, please do well to do so. The link is in the chat box. Thank you, everyone. Have an amazing day. Enjoy the weekend.